Those who live near the intersection of Friedberg and Old Salisbury roads in Forsyth County will never look at the area quite the way they did before. It seems so safe, but it was a hell into which car after car of victims drove late that July 17th. 5 survived their wounds, 4 never came out. A bullet killed 32-year-old R.J. Reynolds chauffeur Ronald Lee Hull. Another wounded his wife alongside him. The son was in the back seat, uninjured.
It was just below Friedberg Road that deputies set up their roadblock. Sources believe it wasn't until Ronnie Hull drove his Blazer around the corner in front of deputies that suspect Michael Hayes stepped into the light. When he stepped away from the car, deputies shot him. Hayes is in satisfactory condition at Baptist Hospital this morning, charged with 4 counts of murder.
Darlene Hull's story begins with her husband Ronnie and son Adam. It ended that night as Michael Hayes approached their car and ordered them to stop.
And he stepped back just a ways and he put the gun up to Ronnie's head. Daddy. And he said, "You." And he pulled the gun and it hit him in the side of the neck. He took a couple of steps backwards, and I seen him pointing at me. And I told him to hit the floor. My son. And then, just as Adam hit the floor, shots rang out, and we remained down. We didn't come back up, me and Adam didn't. Ronnie was still sitting in a chair, in the seat, looking straight ahead with just a blank stare. There was no movement. And I reached over, and I put my arm on him, and I told him I loved him, and goodbye. And I told Adam to quit beating his daddy in the face, that his daddy was dead.
Darlene Hull recalls a horrifying night last summer when she was shot and her husband killed by a roadside sniper.
She lived, but Ronnie died, like 3 other victims that night.
The court finds that the defendant has been on trial in Forsyth County Superior Court for criminal offenses and has been found not guilty by reason of insanity in all cases before this court.
How do you tell an 8-year-old the man that killed his daddy was insane? And I've got to go home and tell him that.
Highway. Michael Hayes was found not guilty by reason of insanity for pulling the trigger in the shooting spree that left 4 dead and 5 wounded in Forsyth County a year and a half ago.
And he's seen his daddy killed just like that. He's seen Michael shoot me. He's seen Michael get ready to shoot him.
Adam Hull was 8 years old when he saw Michael Hayes murder his father and shoot his mother. He escaped injury, but his mother says he has scars that will never heal.
He has nightmares. Somebody's always chasing him.
And the last car to pull into harm's way, just before police opened fire on Michael Hayes, belonged to Ronnie and Darlene Hull. Were you scared?
Oh, yeah.
Their son Adam, then 8 years old, was in the back seat.
I was scared because I knew my dad was shot and he wasn't moving or anything, so I was scared about that. And then Mom, I seen she was bleeding, a puddle of blood here, and I was hoping she wasn't going to die. And he aimed a gun at me. I guess he pulled the trigger. That was the bullet that was meant for me.
Do you feel real lucky?
I feel lucky because I didn't get shot and I still got my mom here. And the way I don't feel lucky is because I lost my dad.
Sunday at 5 on your family station WBFJ. I'm your host, Vern Hill. 23 years ago, July 17th, 1988, Michael Hayes went on a shooting spree on Old Salisbury Road in Forsyth County. Sheriff deputies in Forsyth County and Davidson County both watched in horror with what was unfolding on that fateful night Adam Hall, who was 8 years old at the time, was traveling through that area with his family, his father Ronald and mother Darlene, during that time when Michael Hayes was near the road. That tragic incident left 4 people killed and 5 others wounded. Michael Hayes eventually went to trial for the murder of those 4 people, but was found not guilty by reason of insanity. But our story focuses on that 8-year-old boy, Adam. Tammy and I from the morning show had an opportunity to read some of Adam's testimony by way of an email, and were moved about how the Lord has worked in his life since that fateful night, July 17th, 1988. Here's our interview with Adam Hall talking about that fateful night some 23 years ago on Old Salisbury Road in Forsyth County. This is Sunday at 5 on your family station, WBFJ. Let's talk about that fateful night. It's a Sunday night, July 17th, 1988.
Right.
On Old Salisbury Road. Set the stage for us, maybe even earlier in the day. Why were you guys traveling down that road?
Well, every Sunday, I wasn't raised in church. I was an only child. But every Sunday we would go to my grandmother's house. It's my dad's mom. So we were leaving her house. I don't know if you know where Freebird Church Road is, right there at the intersection. We reached the stop sign. There was a sheriff car blocking the road on our right, which is the route we would have taken. So we were forced to turn left. We had no choice. So we turned left. Just as soon as we got straightened up on Old Salisbury Road, Michael Hayes was standing right in the middle of the road with a gun pointed straight at the car, screaming for us to stop the car. So my dad stopped the car. You know, he didn't know if it was a undercover agent or what. I mean, the cops were right behind us, so we didn't really think it was anything, serious. He started screaming profanities, and my mom, at that point, she realized this is not good, and she screamed, oh my God, Ronnie, because by this time he was walking to the driver's side of the door. He screamed for my dad to roll the window down, and my dad, as he was rolling the window down, he took the gun and just shattered it, and told him to cut the lights on. Well, my dad, in the stress of the moment, I guess, he turned the headlights on. And Michael said, "No, not those lights. Turn the interior light." But, again, he was screaming a lot of profanities. And my dad, "Yes, sir, it's okay, man. It's cool. It's cool. It's cool, And he cut the interior light on. And as soon as that light come on, Michael took the gun, put it right to my dad's head, right behind the ear, and pulled the trigger. And I was already in the back seat, ducked down into the floorboard, and I heard the gun blast. And from that moment on, the whole time, it's like, I tell you, it reminds me, have you ever seen Over the Hedge? When they give the little squirrel the soda pop?
Oh, yeah.
And he's moving really fast, but everything around him's going slow. Well, that's how I would describe it. It was just slow, but everything was moving fast. I heard my dad's last breath. And of course, I didn't realize that's what it was. And within, milliseconds, I heard a second blast. And that's when I heard my mom, she said, "Adam, get down." And I was already down. Took a step back and aimed the gun at me. And at that moment, I heard a whole bunch of gun blasts. It sounded like a war going off. And that's when the sheriffs had shot him. And he actually did pull the trigger and shoot, but the bullet missed me and went into the side panel of the car as he was struck by their bullet. And then I could hear the footprints of them just coming up, rushing to him. And you could smell the gunpowder. Everything was so vivid. They took him down, and he actually wrestled away from them and run over across the other side of the road. But the whole time they're struggling with him, my mom had her finger stuck into the wound, and she was rocking back and forth and praying. The sheriffs and everything were so busy, focused on Michael, that we were left sitting in the car for a few minutes. And I crawled over the hump and got in my dad's lap. And he had a blank stare. And I was sitting there, I was saying, Daddy, we got to go. Come on. My mom turned around. She says, Adam, she says, tell your daddy goodbye and you love him because he's dead. And at that moment, the EMS come rushing up, saw her with all her blood, realized that I was okay, and handed me to a sheriff officer who took me to the sheriff cars that were blocking the road. And they had busted glass and bullet holes in them, and they put me in the back of that sheriff car and left me there by myself.
At 8 years old.
Yeah. They were told not to speak to me because I was a witness to the murder, and they didn't want anybody messing with my testimony. So they avoided me like the plague. And I was there by myself watching all the mayhem. And from that point on, I was, life was different, you know. So there was only one ambulance on the scene because if you know the area, this happened on the Forsyth and Davidson County line. There was miscommunication over whose jurisdiction and all this other stuff. So in the mayhem of everything, only one ambulance was dispatched. So her and Michael Hayes rode to the hospital in the same ambulance beside each other. And she heard the things he was screaming and stuff on the way to the hospital, which today she can't remember those things.
I mean, talking about your story at 8 years old, extremely stressful. And from that, you kind of went into a period of post-traumatic stress disorder, which you kind of sought help for a number of years, didn't you?
Yeah. At first, they had me with seeing psychiatrists and psychologists. I was having night terrors. At the beginning of everything, even if the doorbell rang, I would run and hide. I was scared that the mean man was going to come and get me. Any noise would just send me into fright, shock. But, you know, with time that went away, and then it was just the normal symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, night terrors. They're different than nightmares. Your eyes are open, and in my case, something was always chasing me, but I would scream, and then I would run. And I knew that I just had a spell, but couldn't remember what happened in the dream.
And did this go on for a number of years?
Yes, this went on till I was up in my teens.
I'm thinking about your mom, and I'm thinking about, you know, here she is, she's grieving the loss of her husband and trying to help her son get through the hardest thing that anybody could imagine helping their child get through. How did she cope? How did she deal with this?
She was strong. She had to be for me. While she was in the hospital, I had stayed with my grandparents. 2 or 3 days later, they brought me to see her, and she pulled me up, and she said, "We're going to get through this, buddy." She said, "We're going to build an imaginary brick wall." She says, and in your mind, anytime you get scared or anytime someone's going to hurt you or anything, you put up this brick wall, and nothing can get to you through that. And we're going to be strong.
And through all that, people looking at you on the outside as the years went on, they thought, well, you're okay. You're happy, right? You kind of put forth this maybe facade or persona of like, I'm okay. You know, that's just something that happened. Moving on. Yeah.
Maybe you got too good at hiding behind that brick wall.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I had happy times and stuff. My mom remarried. I had a great stepdad. We did a lot of things together. But I would have, especially around the anniversary date, panic attacks. All my episodes usually happen at night. So during the day at school with it, people didn't know that I had this battle inside. And of course the doctors put me on a lot of medication to help me sleep and help me cope and everything.
And you said you went through a lot of therapy, or some therapy during those 16 years, right?
Yeah, on and off. A lot at the beginning. It really wasn't helping, I guess you'd say. So we learned to cope with it ourselves.
What was the big turning point in your life to bring closure and to bring healing to this tragic event that happened when you were 8 years old?
By the time I was 21, I had met my wife, Tanya, and she had a little girl. named Lindsay. She was 2, well, 3, just turned 3. You know, it was love at first sight. I mean, it was definitely meant to be for us. And we got married over a year later. After the first 9 months of marriage, I'm now gone from single to a family of 5. And I've got all these people depending on me, you know, and it sent me into a relapse of the post-traumatic stress, a very bad relapse. And that's when I had to go back to the doctors and get the medications again. I had always had this void in my life, that hole, that emptiness, and I always thought that what that was when I lost my dad, that Michael had taken a piece of me, you know. He had took an important part of my life. And I always thought when I held my own son and was able to be the father my dad wasn't able to be, that void would go away. And, excuse me, I had twins. I had 2 boys. You know, so here I'm holding 2 boys, and that void wasn't gone. It got worse because then I got all kinds of things started going through my mind. You know, about they'll never know their real grandfather. How will I ever tell them who I am and what happened? You know, just all kinds of stuff. For Tanya, it was pretty rough because I became a different person. The medications really just zonked me out. I was depressed. I could cry at the drop of a hat. I have this brand new family. But to deal with the pain, I was taking the medications, and I had an accidental overdose when my kids were 3 weeks old.
So, Tanya, at this point, you are fairly newly married. You got these new babies, and the man that you married has just drastically changed.
Right.
What's going through your mind?
I really had no idea because, you know, he was definitely different than the person that I had married. You know, at that point, I just thought I can't handle a 5-year-old. Twin boys being 3 weeks old, having to be on sleep apnea monitors, and having to deal with somebody I didn't even know anymore. So, you know, I had to make a decision what was best for my kids and what was best for us as a family. So I sent him to his parents' house. That's where everything pretty much changed. So I put it on myself because I thought it was me that was making him unhappy.
Now, you knew his history, right? You knew about the Michael Hayes.
She didn't understand post-traumatic stress. That was the big kicker.
What happened? The detox? The separation?
Well, I was at my mom's, and of course she had a talk with me. She told me that she knows I'm stronger than this. And after all we've been through, you know, Michael Hayes busted up my family once. Here it was 16 years ago. He was about to bust up my new family. I didn't really surrender at this time, but I made the decision. I'm not going to let this thing destroy my family, you know. So I vowed that I was not going to take any more medication. And I knew from watching her that I needed to just open my Bible and search for a way to beat this thing, because 16 years, nothing had worked. Not doctors, not medication, nothing. So I opened my Bible and I started reading. Without the pills, it was really hard. I could feel it. And it's like a noise inside your head just constantly going. And the night terrors were still there. I was worried that I was going to hurt her or hurt my twins or Lindsay. It was hard. And I cracked. That was what I call my brokenness. You know, Psalms 51, 16 through 17 says, you know, God does not delight in a sacrifice, otherwise I would give it. You're not pleased with burnt offering, but the sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and humbled heart, oh God, you will not despise. And I realized, you know, this is my brokenness. My mom would give me a book, actually, that weekend about the blessings of brokenness from Charles Stanley, and it kind of helped me to see I needed to surrender. And I had probably the most heartfelt prayer that I've ever had in my life. I just cried out. I said, God, I can't take it no more. I can't do this. You take this, 16 years I've dealt with this. I've struggled with this. I can't do it. I don't know how to do it. You do. You can have it. You take it. You can have my family. You can have my dreams, my life, everything. Just don't let me lose them. And immediately I felt this release, just the noise in my head. It just stopped. I mean, it was just quiet, just a peace like you can't explain. I knew that it was gone. It had left. I felt it gone. You know, all I heard was read. Just read. And so my Bible became my medicine. And I'm telling you, I read and I read to the point that, you know, when we got in the car to go somewhere, I had my Bible reading. You know, she would be watching TV on the phone, I'd be reading. And I got, because for the first time, I got it. It wasn't just words on a page. It wasn't just a history. This was life-giving. It was doing something to me. I could feel it, and I got it. You know, it come alive, and I couldn't get enough of it. And especially when I would see things of myself, like, for instance, Ephesians chapter 6 says we battle not against flesh and blood, but against spirits, principalities, and rulers of the dark. And that's when I realized I didn't have an illness. The reason the doctors couldn't cure it, the reason medication couldn't cure it, is because it was a spirit. And only he was the one that delivered me from it.
Now, Adam, you knew that there was a difference there.
Yeah.
Tanya, did you see a difference? Could you tell?
Definitely. It was nonstop reading constantly. And things that he used to do, he quit doing, just stopped. You know, the medicines were gone. Certain music was gone. You know, he's very heavily into music. And if it was not Christian music, it was gone. So, I mean, just, you know, so many different changes that he had went through.
I surrounded myself with him. If I was in the car, WBFJ was on. If I was at home, Inspiration Channel was on. You know, I surrounded myself with, because I didn't want that.
Let me ask you now about Michael Hayes. Do you feel that you've forgiven him? Have you released him?
Yeah, actually, part of that prayer was the forgiveness. You know, I had to let go of the hatred and the grief. See, I held on to all that for 16 years. Rebellion. I mean, I wasn't just angry at Michael Hayes, but I was angry at the sheriff's department. And then I was angry at the judicial system because he got found not guilty. And of course now he's free. So there was a lot more hatred in me than just for Michael Hayes. But I had to let go of all that. And I did. I forgave him, you know, because I was miserable.
So then how did you feel? Probably a test of the depth of that forgiveness and freedom came a year ago when Michael Hayes was finally released from Dorothea Dix. How did you feel when that happened?
It was different. I didn't feel like I thought I would. Seeing his face on TV every year for the last 22 years kept that in my mind, you know, because every year he would come up for release. Part of me was relieved and glad because now I'm not going to have to see him anymore on TV. I'm not going to have to, you know, because even though that you've forgiven someone, the pain is still there. It doesn't mean he's not forgiven. I thought I would be scared, but I'm really not.
Of course, most of us have never been through that sense of a stress of a tragedy like that, you know, be involved in a shooting. Describe the forgiveness part of it to you. How hard was it to do, and how has it made a difference in your life?
I mean, for the first 16 years, it was very hard to forgive. I didn't want to forgive. I wanted to hang on to this anger. I wanted to see him suffer. You know what I mean? But when it got to the point where I was suffering, well, then it was easy. You know, I lived my whole life waiting for the day that I could have a child and be able to do the things my father didn't get to. And when that day came and I couldn't enjoy it, it was hard. That was harder than the forgiveness, period. Letting go of that was not a problem at all. Once you're under brokenness, you know, he breaks you from everything. You know,
How would you describe whenever you did finally let go and you did forgive? Was it almost like a release?
Yeah, that's where the peace and the quiet and everything, the noise in my head stopped. I knew that it was all gone. When I say, I guess when I tell you it was gone, I don't mean just the post-traumatic stress was gone. The unforgiveness, the grief, the hatred, the tormenting spirit, every bit of it was gone, vanished. I felt completely renewed. When the Bible says that He will make you whole, I know what being whole is now. It's indescribable, but you know that it's there. He's literally stepped in and took over.
Adam, how would you like to have people remember you? If they know your whole story and someone says, Adam Hall, how do you want to be remembered?
I want them to remember that the weapon Satan used against me, God has turned around, and now I am a mighty weapon in His hands for His glory. That's how I want them to see me. One that is giving Him the glory out of the darkest moment.
Adam was part of a band at one time. The band was called 6 Steps. The band members and their Christian walk had a profound influence on Adam and his decision to literally turn his life over to Christ several years later.
One of my dreams was to be in a recording studio and be a part of an album. I got hooked up with a guy at work, and he asked me, hey, you want to play bass for this band? Our bass player's leaving. We need somebody to fill in. I said, sure. And it was 6 Steps is the name of the band. But this is before I was delivered. This is before I had surrendered. I was saved the whole time, just didn't live like it. So I got to play with them, and their example, just how the relationship they had with the Lord, it really it affected me, because I didn't have that relationship. I was a believer and I was saved, but I didn't have a relationship like they did, and I desired that. And what gave me the words at my prayer when I surrendered, Lord, take my dreams, take my life, that is actually the words of one of the songs that we wrote. It's called I Need You.
Here's the band 6 Steps and a portion of the song called I Need You.
I give to you my life. I give to you all my dreams. I give to you these doubts. I give to you all my needs. For I'm told you can make a beautiful thing out of all this mess that I am. Is it true you can make a beautiful thing? So God, take my dreams, take my life, for you are the only one can make some sense of it all. Take my doubts, take my fears, for you are the only one. It's you I need, it's you I need.
The words of that song spoke to me for many years. That's why I said I knew deep down what I needed to do. I just never would do it. And when it finally got, the pressure was too much. That song was a big help to me as far as giving me the words to pray.